The NAR was found to be on Jeffrey Epstein's manifest. Stick around.
Yeah. It's the Bitter Realtor Podcast. We're talking about all things Los Angeles real estate. If it's got four walls and a roof, we're talking about it bitterly.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Bitter Realtor Podcast. I'm Joey Rockenstein, your host, and on this real estate voyage with me, Scott Goldman.
Hello, bitter people.
Today's topic, it's a hot one, the NAR settlement.
The National Association of Realtors.
Now we've done 2 episodes about what has been going on with these lawsuits and the copycat lawsuits.
Is this the third one?
Well,
this is number 2.
This is the settlement, I think, to take care of.
So we did 1.
Oh, right, for episodes.
And then we had,
this is 3.
Okay.
Yeah, this is number 3.
Just checking the math.
Yeah, because you can't have 1, 2 without a 3.
And the lawyers seem to only care about the math on this NAR thing.
Absolutely. But the NAR said enough is enough. We're going to settle all this, and we're going to change the way things work in the real estate industry.
Settlement amount, $412 million.
Something around that.
What's the number I put up there?
Right, that's, we're going to go by whatever it says right there.
Yeah.
So what is the lawsuit about? All right, let's talk about that. All right, let's remind people what.
Okay, so what it's essentially about is there is a notion amongst the lawyers who filed the suit that there is collusion amongst real estate agents to keep commissions fixed at a certain rate. They were complaining about 6 to 9%. I don't think you or I have ever charged 6%.
Negative, I have not.
Let alone 9%.
Right.
I think it's a struggle to get 5% in this market, which is what we typically do. And what that means is we're asking for the seller to give up 5% of their proceeds to cover both the cost of the listing agent commission and the cost of the buyer's agent commission. The buyer's agent's going to get 2.5%. The listing agent's going to get 2.5%. I'll break the math down for you real easy. It's $1 million home. That's a $50,000 commission. $25,000 to the listing agent, $25,000 to the buyer's agent. More specifically to their brokerages, because this agent isn't going to get 100% of that.
I'm not.
25 grand. He's going to get 75%, and even something off of that. Our particular brokerage. Should I put the breakdown here?
Sure.
All right. So here's the breakdown of how our brokerage takes our commission. Similar to probably how your brokerage takes your commission, although Berkshire Hathaway doesn't necessarily charge us for having a nice studio like this.
No.
Yeah.
I wouldn't consider this a studio.
Hey.
Right. But all right, let's break it down a little bit more, because I have some documents here from the Department of Justice.
Did I get it pretty right though?
Yeah, I would say so.
All right. Did I tee it up well?
Yeah, you teed it.
Okay.
Hit
it.
So the Department of Justice has decided to weigh in on this, because you know that they need to have their say too. Mm-hmm. So they're saying that buyers have been misled into thinking that the buyer brokerage services are free. Also limiting access to certain lock boxes because not all agents have what's called a Supra, which is essentially a lock box that works off of Bluetooth or a fob that agents use through their MLS.
But hold on, that's a kind of a weird one.
It is a weird one.
The lawyers are maintaining that because you need a membership to a real estate association in order to use a Supra is a box where you can put the keys to a residence inside of it, safely store them. I'm not sure I understand this part of it, because I think it's more about agents who don't want to pay the $17 a month.
Right, but they're saying because of that makes it unfair to have other buyers have the opportunity, I guess, to see the property because their agent doesn't have access to those lock boxes.
Which is, again, I think you and I talked about it the other day. I think it's just a way to get the listing agent out to the property to let the buyer's clients
right
in.
There's a whole workaround for all that, but now these attorneys think that buyers and sellers have been treated unfairly because of some of these things.
I just want to put a picture of an attorney. This is an attorney.
Right, an attorney, not the attorney, but
this is an attorney.
Right.
Hold on.
Right.
Okay, I feel better.
So Now the NAR has decided to put an end to all this. They want to settle everything, and I'm sure you've read the headlines because all the clickbait that's going on about how the real estate, essentially the system of commissions is going to completely change, that there's no longer going to be a 6%. There's no longer going to be a buyer's agent commission paid for by the seller. All these things, which, I mean, in some cases, it's already like that, where some sellers won't pay a commission. They won't offer anything to the buyer's side.
And that's a problem for the seller.
Right. That's another thing that the DOJ was talking about, that there's been what they call steering, where a buyer's agent will see a discounted commission in the MLS and then won't show that to their client.
So, just to explore that, it is listed in the MLS, the multiple listing service, what the seller is paying as a commission, what the, more specifically, the brokerage, the listing brokerage is offering to the buyer's brokerage. I don't know why it's escaping my brain.
The buyer's agent commission?
Thank you, the BAC, thank you. And that's a cooperative amount. That's listed in the MLS. What Joey's saying is a lot of buyer agents, if they don't see 2.5 in that box, they're moving on, which means their clients are not seeing the property. It's not up to the seller. That's a buyer agent move.
Right, which is not great. I mean, you know, a sale is a sale, whether or not you get a lot of money or some money.
Well, and 0.5% is usually not a huge deal, but to your point, that's a house now that this buyer would never have seen because the buyer's agent made a decision based on what their compensation was going to
Right.
be, which they should never have done in the first place.
But the majority of buyers, not all, but the majority, are savvy enough to find properties that they want to see online on their own, and they're sending, at least my clients, they'll send me these properties, and whether or not it has a 2.5% or a 2% commission, and it shows it on Redfin what the commission is to the buyer side, by the way.
It doesn't show it on Zillow.
No.
But it does show it on Redfin.
Right, well, that's because Zillow's trying to monopolize it, all the other things. So but that's another podcast episode. But no, thank you. So they're trying to do, essentially say that the seller no longer is obligated to offer a commission to the buyer's side. So let's talk about the implications of that and what it can mean moving forward, as in moving forward starting in July, on that date that they proposed.
Yeah, the courts are still trying to decide.
Right, they still have to finalize things.
The settlement's done, but the courts may go, no, nothing needs to change. Not only that, the last thing I think a bunch of us agents want, especially those of us who have been doing it a very long time, we don't really need the disruption.
No.
The business has already got plenty to deal with the Zillows and the Redfins.
And interest rates.
And the price of homes.
The Fed not doing anything.
You know, thank you.
Right.
Yeah.
So let's talk about these implications, because there's been a lot of talk about, well, you should have a buyer-broker agreement, and then, you know, if it is going to be the buyer's
Looks like
responsibility. But the question is, why in the hell would any buyer want to pay a commission to their seller when the commission is essentially paid, if they're getting financing, out of the loan?
So this is where I had a fun discussion with our manager the other day. She said, what do you think about it? I said, well, ask me if you want me to help you find a house. And she said, okay, Scott, will you help me find a house? I said, yeah, that'll be 10 grand.
Right.
Yeah. And she said, well, that's not the right answer. I said, no, what's the right answer? And she said, that'll be 20 grand.
Nice.
Right?
Yeah.
So it should be based on a percentage. Like, okay, buyers think here's where I think it's breaking down. Buyers have this thing in their head like they're very savvy because they have these online tools. What they don't have is they don't see the entirety of the listing on a Zillow or on a Redfin. They
Right.
don't see the very smallish details. And that's important stuff. And that's why I think the buyers are going to start getting, the buyers are going to file a lawsuit pretty soon if they're not protected properly.
Right. So does that mean that it's going to be more on the listing agent to take things under control? Like, is the buyer just going to go directly to the listing agent? Or is the buyer even going to be able to pay their agent? Like, if I'm a first-time home buyer, Scott, and you're representing me, do I have an extra $20,000 saved up to pay a 2.5% commission for the sale of my house?
So it's a great question. And as a first-time home buyer, you're quite exposed. You don't know that inspection needs to take place in a certain amount of time. And if you're lucky, the listing agent, here's what's, you know what, I'm getting a little boiling the ocean here. I think the listing agents are going to end up absorbing these clients. Just like when you and I have a lease and somebody comes along and they found the lease, you're not really representing the lessee per se.
Right.
You're just making the deal happen with the idea that you are looking after both sides.
Right.
I see a lot of buyers getting bullied, hosed, bullied, really taken advantage of because they're not going to understand certain parts of the contract. For instance, you and I were talking about inspection in the previous episode, and who's going to look after that buyer? Who's going to tell that buyer, inspections in 48 hours?
Right.
And who's going to provide the name of an inspector or a plumber or an electrician or a mold remediation specialist?
You're going to have to find all these things on your own, and not only find them, you're going to have to schedule all that to happen within the time frame of the inspection contingency, if you even know what the hell a contingency is. If the listing agent is going to explain those things to you, or if you're going to have to find out that information on your own.
So maybe it's a buyer's agent consultant type relationship where you're actually paid the time spent. What I don't care for is, like, for the house that I closed on a while back, my buyers thought they'd found the house.
Right.
And I had to go, and their attitude was like, well, you didn't end up even finding this house for us. And I said, oh, I didn't? It's one of the first houses I showed you, and you said you didn't like it. And that made me very bitter.
But that's the thing, though, like, let's be very real here. The information of houses that is for sale is no longer under the encryption of realtors.
Correct.
That is out in the open. It's public knowledge.
It's in the wild.
So just like with any industry, like you can edit your own movie now. You don't need to hire an editor. You don't need to hire a videographer.
We edit these shows every week.
We have plenty of crappy equipment to put this podcast up online.
We got a nice green screen.
So I mean, come on. Yeah. So this is like so I don't even like so early 2000s. Like everybody can do anything you want to do now. Everything is on the internet. So the fact that you found the house,
everything's been democratized.
Everything.
No question.
The fact that you found the house is like such like a small percentage of the work that goes into this. And I know everybody thinks that buyer's agents don't do jack shit, but Jack is wrong about that.
Jack don't know shit.
Right.
Because that ain't how it goes. It is. I maintain it's more work for a buyer's agent than a seller's agent, than the listing agent.
You got to fan the flames, like we were talking about in a previous episode. Like you need to really have an agent after the offer gets accepted, because then the ball starts rolling. And it is a heavy ball that you have to keep in motion. And especially during inspections, because when a buyer freaks out because of things that are going on with the house, you really need to have an agent there to kind of like cool things off and to reassure you that either it is a good idea to keep moving forward because the things can be fixed, or there's a major flaw with the house that is going to cost a lot of money and maybe it's not such a good idea.
As you were saying that, I was thinking about the fact that it's already hard enough these days in particular to get under contract.
Right. There are several buyers out there that are causing multiple offer situations. Like that is still a thing right now.
There's not a lot of inventory. And I would suggest to buyers, be represented. Even if it ends up costing you some money, because it could cost you a whole lot more. Like hundreds of thousands of dollars if somebody's not properly representing you in a transaction.
And that's just going to lead to more lawsuits.
Right. So back to the lawsuit. As I've spoken with you, I think that some lawyer somewhere got pissed off at his agent.
Right.
And decided, I'm going to call upon all my other lawyer friends and we're going to do this.
Right.
Which, frankly, our industry shouldn't be a cottage industry for lawyers. And if you look at the lawsuit, the only people making any money are the lawyers.
Are the attorneys. Mm-hmm. And it's interesting because Martha Mosier, who is our president of Berkshire Hathaway Home Services California Properties, she brought up a good point when she was saying that it's so interesting that when the lawyers filed the motion to have the attorney's fees paid, in the actual motion it says about a standard percentage that attorneys charge, which is anywhere from X to Z.
30 to 50%.
Right, something like that. Yeah. And so they are getting 39% of the settlement from not only what the NAR proposes, but also from the lawsuits that were already paid out.
So let me see if I understand this. The very people arguing to take away our percentage of a transaction are charging 5 to 6 times as much in percentage
Correct.
for their work
Yeah,
than for our work.
correct.
Something seems up to me, folks.
Yeah, you know, I didn't do too well in math in high school, but I'm pretty sure that the math is off on that one.
You don't need an abacus to see that.
Oh my God.
You don't need an egg crate with beans.
Right.
There's some, foul. Foul in Denmark. Should we wrap it up, or you got something more you want to say?
I mean, it all just comes down to, again, value that agents provide to their clients. Like, this isn't a matter of just finding a house, a property. It just isn't a matter of, going to look at the house, scheduling a showing or an open house or any of those things.
I don't want to be the one to say that we're indispensable, but we are indispensable.
Right. There is so much that goes on behind the scenes that which an agent should tell you what they're doing behind the scenes. Like, your client should know what exactly you're doing. Your client should be on the phone with you the majority of the time during the weeks that followed the transaction.
I mean, in the transaction we just did, I spoke to my buyers every day, 3-4
Right.
times a day. It was wide open communication.
Right. And it should be you on the phone with your client, not the other agent on the phone
Of
with your
course,
client.
right.
Just, I want to make that clear. That's not a thing that should happen.
Quick story. I went and had cocktails with a friend of mine at Casa Vega. This is a couple months ago. And she says, is it hard being a real estate agent? I'm thinking about being a real estate agent. I said, oh, well, let me give you my phone. And 15, 20 minutes later, she handed my phone back and said, yeah, I don't think I want to be a real estate agent. Because in that 15 or 20 minutes, I must have gotten 15 texts, 14 phone calls. I mean, my phone wouldn't stop buzzing.
Wow.
And she said, you're not going to answer that? I said, no, I'm sitting at the bar. It's 6 o'clock.
Right.
They'll have to wait.
Right.
But
I think I was one of those phone calls.
oh, no doubt.
Yeah.
But not everybody shares the same sense of urgency. If I'd have thought any of those calls were urgent, I still wouldn't have answered them.
Right.
Because the martinis and also the margaritas are very good there. But
Right.
but
It's a staple.
you have to have your own boundaries as an agent as well, and you do a good job of that. I think. I think you've found it a little challenging in your current transaction, but. Speaking of transactions, should we pitch our condo
Yeah,
before
absolutely.
we call it?
Absolutely.
You go ahead.
Okay. So we have a great condo. This place is at a very, very big building. It's a big complex. It's at 5460 White Oak Avenue, and it's Unit D as in dog 205. And it's
nice.
fantastic. It's
990.
just under 1,000 square feet, 2 bed, 2 bath.
Super clean.
Very clean. It's modern units. And like I said, there's a lot of units in that building. So this complex is a good price point for people who are looking to have a nice condo for $349,000.
That's it. And we're telling you the price because in about a week, today is what, the 3rd?
Correct.
So on the 11th, I think we go live.
Yeah, around 11-ish.
So now's your chance to make us a pocket listing offer.
It's ready for the taking. It could
What's
be
your
yours.
phone number? Give them.
310-210-5958.
310-963-7867. We're in the MLS.
If you have any questions about that condo or about the NAR proposed settlement, you can reach out to either me or Scott. I will put our contact information in the show notes below. Guys, I'm Joey Rockenstein. This is Scott Goldman. This is a Bitter Realtor podcast. Why am I bitter? Because I'm a realtor.